nothing but faith. There's things far too great that I want to accomplish. I'm hoping 25 hours a day, but something good works out, and I'm just like, dang. Think everything's gonna be okay. Yeah, I'm like, dang. Think you might just know the way. I'm like, dang.
Welcome to Dang.
Dang. And I'm Todd Bridges.
And I'm Bettijo. And today we have a guest with us, life coach Andrew McKee.
How are you?
I love the way Andrew described himself. He says, I am someone who has been given the gift of knowing the difference between who I am and who I thought I was. This gift of knowing changed my experience in life from one of suffering to one of peace. As a life coach, Andrew helps other people experience that same knowing.
Yes, and Andrew also has a podcast called People Who Suffer. You guys should tune into that also.
Thank you.
Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So tell us where your story begins.
Oh, man. So my story begins that I was just somebody who had a lot of mental suffering. Like, I might as well start with one of my earliest memories. So I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, that you feel different than everyone else.
Yeah.
Have you ever? So when I was in kindergarten, I was given an assignment. I don't remember what the assignment was, but I do remember that the night before, I knew I wasn't going to do it. And the morning of, I didn't want to go to school because I didn't want to let my teacher down. But I couldn't tell my parents because I didn't want to let my parents down. Like, I already at 5 years old had a very, very strong sense of letting people down. And this is no fun way to go through life. I don't know.
Right, no, it's miserable.
And I can spot people on the street who have the same thing. Like, it's just as clear as a bell. So I did what my 5-year-old mind came up with at the time, which was I went to school, I got off the bus, I went and hid in the coat room for 3.5 hours. Oh, no. As a 5-year-old. And we can laugh about it now, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so obviously not the thing to do.
No.
But what on earth was going on in my head that I thought that was my only option at 5 years old? And then I snuck out at the end of the day. So this is back in the day where if the kid didn't show up to school, the school didn't call the parents.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, they just...
Because I do have a story like that also. Where,
Really?
Yeah, I got suspended from school, and I was supposed to take the suspension note home, and I didn't take it home, and I kept going to the park in the morning instead of going to school. Because I did not want to tell my mom that I was
Because you couldn't go
suspended.
back to school till it was signed.
Until back to school was signed.
Yeah.
So
did you ever tell?
Yeah, okay, well, here's how I got busted. Was my goody two-shoes brother
Okay.
gave me up. He was tucking my bed, trying to help me clean my room up because it was a mess. And he found all these things, pulls them out. It was like 10 suspension notices.
Wow. Wow.
Because I did not want to. I should have just fessed up, and took the punishment, but I didn't want that.
Well, you should have and you shouldn't have,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
you do whatever occurs to this thing up
Oh,
here. And I had an entire life of constant avoidance of that feeling of letting people down,
Yes.
the feeling of whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And so I started searching when I was really young for a way to feel better. I started reading self-help books when I was a teenager.
Oh, wow, okay.
Wow.
Which was really unusual in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Now it's not so unusual.
No.
But in the 80s, that isn't what people did.
No, yeah.
So I started reading stuff to help, and everything would help for like a day or two. I would have a thought. I would go, oh, maybe this is it, and I'd get all excited. Didn't last. Didn't last. And so my search continued until I was, wow. I mean, this is kind of a convoluted story because there was something that happened prior to that I don't talk about much. I go into pretty good detail about all this stuff on my podcast.
Yeah.
We don't have time to go into the full story today, but I had a brief death experience in 2006. Now, I was somebody, and I call it a brief death experience. I don't call it a near-death experience because near-death and brief death don't teach you the same thing.
Yeah.
Near-death is like death is here and you get real close to it.
Yeah.
Brief death is you get into it where you're not actually alive.
Yeah.
So I flatlined when I was in the hospital for a couple of minutes. And while that happened, I had a pretty beautiful experience. Again, won't talk about it here, but the most beautiful part of the experience was the feeling.
Gotcha.
Now, somebody who had been suffering my whole life with this constant feeling of anxiety
Gotcha.
and fear, not good enough, not doing the right thing, always letting people down, always being wrong, and having to fake my way through it. And luckily, having enough talent that I could show up as being a semi-normal human.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was kind of funny, and I had some athletic skills. And,
But it felt like faking. Like you felt like you were kind of just.
it took so much energy.
Oh,
It took
yeah.
so much energy. So I would go to social events, and by the time I'd been there for, you know, an hour, a couple hours, I had to get out. I can't keep this up. So anyway, so many people that I grew up with were shocked when I started letting this out. They call me, they're like, I had no idea. But now looking back on it, I can see. And it all started with stuff like skipping class for 3 hours as a 5-year-old.
Yeah, our program is called, and the program that I'm in, sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. That's
Yeah.
what we do.
Yeah.
You have to go, so you have to make yourself be happy until you eventually become happy.
Yeah.
And that works for people in our program. I have 32 years sobriety, that's why. So,
Wow,
yeah.
that is awesome.
I love what you're saying, Andrew. And I feel like I can totally relate to that. Those feelings. I bet you can too. I think a lot of people can relate
You
to
really
that.
can, I'm sure. She doesn't want to
know.
let anybody down.
It's so true.
No.
Actually,
and she actually does a really good job of not letting people down.
Yeah, see,
Right?
Yeah, but you
like she
gotta-
has this capability to kind of keep going and keep
Yeah,
going.
see, but I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care.
I do feel like I'm reaching
Can't help you. Sorry.
a breaking
That's much
point.
healthier.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I wish I could adopt that somehow. But I do feel like I'm reaching, like I never used to describe myself as being stretched thin, but I
Right.
find those words coming out of my mouth all of the time recently because I think maybe just as I get older, or I don't know what, but I'm like, I'm trying to juggle and hold all of this, but I don't know how much longer I got it. Like just letting everybody know.
But see, that's the thing about in our program. I had to learn to say no.
Yeah.
And the problem is some people don't know how to say no. Like if I want to do something for you, I'm gonna do it. But if I don't want to do it now, I go, nah, I can't do that. I'm sorry.
And that's a great
I'm good
thing
with
to
that.
get
And I don't
to.
care what you think about it anymore.
Right. So what I talk about is the why behind all of that. Like when you say, like, I wish that I could be like that, well then my conversation revolves around, well, why can't you be? What is it in your mental makeup that has you believing I am this way? And it's just something I have to deal with. Like this was what I lived with, right? I had lots of evidence on my mom's side of the family, and this was what supported my belief of who I was until I was 48 years old. So 48 years old, I always had the ability to look at my mom's side of the family, lots of mental challenge, lots of brilliance too. Super talented, very smart, incredible memories. By the way, an incredible memory is one of the most difficult things to go through life with because you can remember so many things. And it also indicates an ability to fill in every detail of how you think your life should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the definition of suffering, my favorite definition of suffering that I've ever heard is having an experience different from the one I think I should be having.
I remember, okay, so I actually first met Andrew. I know his wife, Jill, really well. And I was working with Jill, and I was going through my divorce. And she had me do a life coaching session with Andrew. And you wrote on like big paper this these circles. And when
You remember
we
the
got
circle.
married,
You
yeah,
remember the
I
circle.
kept it on my closet door for years. Was it still there when we got married? There was big paper stuck to the closet door.
I don't remember.
You don't remember that, so I probably got it. Started falling down, like the sticky. Gave
Oh,
up.
yeah.
Do you remember
Yes.
that paper? Okay, Andrew drew that.
Oh, okay.
That was from my session with
Yes.
him. I wish I still
kept
had
falling
it.
down,
I
and I
would
was
have
like,
brought
just-
it
I'll
in.
give you a new one. I can actually give it to you as like an attachment to this, so when we release
So we can
it,
show it.
people can access it.
Can you
It's on my
describe
Instagram
it
too.
for us a little bit? Because it was so helpful to me.
So this is the reason that picture came from what occurred for me. So I mentioned two experiences, right? One of them was the brief death experience. So to go back to that just for a moment, I had been mentally suffering, living in this feeling of anxiety constantly, always trying, never being able to get out of the feeling. And if I did, it was really briefly and then back in. And so I was always seeking for ways to get out of that. So my addictions were different than in sobriety. Like that was a different thing. Mine was like playing video games or watching TV or doing whatever.
Something to numb and just
anything to stop thinking.
Yeah.
Anything to stop the constant spiral of negative thinking that I lived with. So the brief death experience, so in that, I was released from that for 2 minutes, completely released from it. And I found myself in this feeling that was so beautiful that it was indescribable. And when I came out of it, the only word I could use to describe it to the people who were around me was love.
Gotcha.
Love. And I had felt things that were, I think, pretty big experiences of love prior to that, but they absolutely didn't come close to what this one felt like. So when I came out of it, tried to make sense of what had happened. And I went up into my head and thought, okay, what happened? Well, I was not alive, so I must have been with God. Didn't see God, didn't see angels, none of that. Just felt this feeling. And then I was no longer afraid of the end of this life. Because I had previously in my mind, after a lifetime of letting people down, felt this massive feeling of unworthiness.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so in what I was raised in, worthiness was a real big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
You had to be worthy, and certainly when you died, you needed to be worthy of happiness on the other side. There wasn't a moment where I ever felt worthy in my life, and I felt maybe at my unworthiest prior to this incident. And yet, I found myself in this incredible feeling. And so when I came back, I'm like, okay, I was wrong about that. But I didn't know what it was. I just knew that it was beautiful. So all of a sudden, my fear of what comes after this, gone. There's been 112 billion people live on the planet, around about, right?
Yeah.
There's only 8 billion of us right now. So 104 billion have had their experience. And life it's a grand experience.
Yeah.
We show up for it. We can tell approximately when we showed up for this experience by looking at us.
Yes.
So I'm 55 years old, just turned 55 a couple of days ago, and you can tell by looking at me that I'm around 55 years old. So my experience started 55 years ago. It's going to end in the next 25 to 30 years, probably.
Yeah, and that's
the only exception is Todd. You cannot tell
that's
how long
the thing,
Todd has been around.
No, he looks way too young.
Yeah, but that is the thing that I had the realization that you have to come to when you start getting older, start past your 50s, is, for men especially, I maybe only have 20 to 25 years, maybe 30 if I get lucky, left. But you have to be okay with being okay with that.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people are not okay with that, and they have a hard time getting through it.
Yes.
And for me, same thing you're talking about, because in my program, I had to learn to really recognize my emotions, to know what they were. Yeah. I had trouble knowing what they were. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Like, if I was happy, that felt the same way as being sad, kind of.
Yeah.
And I would use drugs whether I was happy, whether I was sad, whether I was getting a gift or whether not getting a gift. So I had to find somewhere in there to take care of myself.
Yeah.
The biggest problem I had was is that okay to take care of myself? But see, now I know absolutely yes, because if I don't take care of me, I can't help nobody else.
And the self you're taking care of, right, is this thing that we get to use to experience life.
Yes. And it's that inner child we're taking care of. We're taking care of that inner child.
It's all of it. Like
that's right.
There's just so much to this that we don't understand. Yeah. And why would we? Because we were left to our own devices. Like, I never had a conversation about anything like this ever in my life until I did go to therapy when I was in my mid-30s. And then I hired a life coach. I actually apprenticed with a life coach. And this was before anybody knew what life coaching was. Had never heard of it. This was in 2007, I had been to see this guy named Steve Chandler speak. And my gosh, so I had lived all my life up to that point with this constant question of why. Like, why do I feel like this? Why this? Why that? Why everything? Was just wandering around in why. Why is exhausting.
Yes.
It's really exhausting. And I went to see Steve Chandler speak, and he spoke on that day about something called the owner-victim choice. Choice between being an owner and a victim. And he spoke so simply and so clearly and plainly that I found myself doing this. I'll look at the camera on it.
You're right. It's that simple. It is, yeah. We complicate it as humans. We
complicate it as humans.
Yeah.
And the reason we do that is because this thing is designed to complicate it and to love and seek complexity.
Yes.
Because there are some basic things that happen in this thing called our identity. So we have an identity that starts getting built from the moment we're born, and it is a collaboration, a combination, a collection of everything we have heard, thought, hung on to, been taught for the entirety of our lives, and have the ability to maintain. So the more powerful this instrument is, this brain, the more powerful your identity is likely to be. And the more powerful your identity is likely to be, the more rules you have about how things should be.
Yes.
Which opens you up, if we go back to that
The happiness
definition of suffering, it's having an experience different from the one I think I should be having.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that
See,
so key?
it is.
I love that.
Because for me, I've always had to realize that a thought is just a thought. It's only
Have you always been able to do that?
Well, no, I had to teach myself that.
Right.
Because see, something in my head when I thought it was like, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible person, I'm this and that. But I had to realize, because if you meet someone who's a jerk, you're like, God, I want to punch that guy in the face. It's okay to have the thought. Don't do the action.
No trouble with the thought.
Yeah, the thought is fine.
My family,
don't do the action.
My family actually dies laughing, so I have a tendency towards certain thoughts all the time. And one of the thoughts that I have is, when I'm walking down the street, if I see another guy, I always think he wants to punch me in the face.
See, I'm probably thinking I want to punch somebody in the face.
Okay, so I could be right if I'm walking by you.
Right,
You might want to punch me.
Yeah.
And they're like, I never have that thought. Why do you have that thought? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just always showed up.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm always ready. I'm always ready. In the event someone's going to punch me in the face, I'm ready.
See, I know where mine comes from. Mine comes from being picked on by a lot of things. My father, being picked on by the police, being picked on. So that's where mine comes from. So when I see police, I'm always on guard. Like, oh my gosh, they're going to pull me over. And moving to Arizona, the craziest part about it was they're not even looking at me here.
No.
It's the weirdest thing in the world.
No.
I'm used to California driving, they look, they get behind you. Here, they're like, wow, they don't even look at me.
And here you're
here.
going 80 and they don't even think about you.
No, I had a cop pull next to me, and he looked at me for a second, and he zoomed past. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's going faster than me. And I'm like, wow, this is a weird place.
So this is really interesting that you say that, because that's one of the things. So our lives are filled with things that we call triggers.
Yes.
That have us feeling a certain way. And the only reason those things exist, these things we call triggers, is because we have something in our head that tells us that this is not how it should be.
Wow.
So if I go back to that circle when we talked, so fast forward from the brief death experience in 2006, which I didn't understand, but it did make me feel like Buddha for a couple of weeks. I was super, super peaceful, and everyone could tell, and I had never been that way before. And people wanted to talk to me and wanted to be around me, and that was different, because I was just so still and so calm. Well, that faded really quickly because I had no idea what it was. Fast forward 12 years to April 7th of 2018. I am sitting in my basement contemplating life. In contemplation. And contemplation, unfortunately, is something that is disappearing entirely from our culture, because we don't get a moment to not be thinking.
Yeah, we have these phones where we can just constantly.
And the moment this most beautiful thing of all things, stillness, the moment that shows up for most people now, they feel uncomfortable with it and have to do something and have to create input. Well, the problem with input, and on one of the podcasts that you guys did, I was listening to it, and you said, we got to stop thinking. And you said, well, we can't do that. And you were like, well, we got to think less or something. I can't remember exactly how it went down. On April 7th, 2018, my mind went silent. Now, this was an incredible experience because, and I'll share a story that kind of sets that up. A couple of years earlier, my wife Jill and I were driving down the road, and I looked over at her at a stoplight, and I could tell she was thinking something bad about me. Like, I didn't know what I'd done, but I knew darn well she was thinking something bad about me. And I looked over, because I'm so smart, right? I can.
Well, because you're psychic. That's the thing.
I'm
we have
psychic.
to teach ourselves.
Right. So I looked over at her, and I said, what are you thinking? And she said, nothing. And I said, that's not possible.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's her.
I said, that's absolutely not possible. But there's two reasons that I thought it wasn't possible. And the biggest one was that I had never for a moment in my life had any sort of silence in my brain.
Wow.
Never.
Okay.
Like, my brain was so busy. This thing called ADHD, I was the poster child for ADHD, but was never given a diagnosis because I lived in the country in rural Canada, where no one knew about this in 1985 when I started, or 75 when I started going to school.
No.
Here's how I got diagnosed. I got diagnosed by the teachers as a bad kid that disrupted the other students, that couldn't stop talking.
Oh, yeah.
So on the third day of class, or by the third day of class, every single year until high school, my desk got moved up and attached to the teacher's desk.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I got separated from the kids every single year. And you go back and you look at my my report cards and read the teacher comments. Bright kid, could really do well, can't finish anything, distracts the other students. My favorite comment was, Andrew talks a lot. Sometimes I don't think he even realizes he's talking.
That's interesting, because I was kind of on that same level, except for the teacher would say, why doesn't Todd get in trouble? And the teacher would say, because he's already finished all his work and he has straight A's, and you're dumb enough to talk to him. So that's why you're in trouble and he's not.
Because you were finished.
Because I was done.
Because you were also driven to succeed.
Yeah.
Like, you were driven to succeed. I honestly didn't have the capacity to do it. So going back to my story, like, I was failing classes when I was a kid. And I was, this is another one of my favorites. So I finished second or third in the provincial math contest for, I think it was 7th graders at the time. My report card for math at the time I finished second or third in the provincial math contest, I had 40% in math.
Oh, wow.
I could not complete assignments because this thing wouldn't let me do it. It was so busy. So back to me sitting at a traffic light with Jill, looking at her, completely incapable of comprehending that she might actually be thinking of nothing. Incapable of thinking
because
that.
You couldn't do
because
it, right?
I had never had that experience.
Can you?
Yeah.
Do you ever just sit there and not think anything? No, I'm with you, Andrew. I don't think I'm always thinking something.
Sometimes I'm in such a peaceful place in my brain, and then one of the kids or someone will say something and you guys disrupt. That's why I go. Sometimes I just have to, you don't want to just leave and I say, okay, I'm going to go to the mall, walk around. I'm going to be with myself.
See, that is such a
But I had to learn it. I had to
skill.
learn that, though. I had to learn that. That was a learned process.
Yeah, and the reason I know you had to learn that is because addiction is what occurs when we're trying to escape the busyness of this.
Yes.
And if this isn't busy, we don't need anything to escape it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you learned it, and now you get to be in that stillness. And how does it feel?
It feels great. It's the best feeling in the world.
It's the best feeling in the world.
And I'm not mad at anybody. I just want to be with myself and just be with myself.
Yes.
Because I'm learning.
Be with the self. And every time you do that, you keep going here, right?
Because that's where it's at. It's
be
all
with myself.
It's here. Yeah.
Yes.
Because and it's also the thing that I tell people a lot of times is we don't know, I had to learn to treat myself good.
Yeah.
And to say no when I know I can't have something done, or to be able to be positive with myself to say it's going to be all right. See, I have to be able to stroke my inner child and say it's going to be okay. Life's going to be fine. You're going to be okay, Todd. Let's move forward. You don't have to be upset. And then I'm fine with it. But sometimes I can't talk about it right away because I have to figure out what are the feelings I'm feeling and figure out what they are. She wants me to immediately
And
jab
what is
in
the
jump, I'm
best
like,
place?
I can't.
And what is the best place for you to come to an understanding of what you're feeling?
In my brain.
But what's the best?
For me,
What's the best state?
the best state,
The
calm
best-
state, quiet state.
Calm,
Quiet. That's the only way you can
still.
do it. Yeah. You can't do it if you're not still.
Yeah.
I can't do it with a lot of distractions.
And this is what's disappearing from society altogether. So
Yeah.
an epidemic of anxiety doesn't even come close to touching what it is. It's way beyond that because no one is capable of finding stillness.
You know what does it a lot for me too is I watch these on YouTube. I watch these nature shows.
The nature
Yeah.
shows are
The
calming.
nature shows are the ones that can really, you sit there and you have to really learn, and you can quiet your mind, and you're just listening, and then someone's like, rah, 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 and you're like,
Yeah.
What's interesting is he does actually like having some sort of like that input, not just quiet. I like quiet. Like I'll drive in the car and
But you're
not listen to
thinking.
anything.
But
I'll
you're
just
thinking.
but I am thinking.
You're
But the
processing.
difference I think between our experiences, because I'm like you, I do feel like I'm always thinking. But my mind is not unpleasant. Like I'm actually
You
very
always felt like
comfortable
a
in-
pretty good person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's
Confident, not full of fear, doubt, all that
Right.
stuff. I had all the other stuff. So I'm sitting there with Jill at the traffic light. I look at her, I say that. She says nothing. I say, I don't believe you. She said, no, really nothing. And I'm like, well, why are you lying? Just tell me what it is. We get in a fight. I have no capacity to understand that she actually was thinking of nothing at the time. And 2 years later, I'm sitting in my basement contemplating life, and my brain goes silent. And I found myself in this feeling. And the feeling was so beautiful that I couldn't comprehend it. And I'm like, whoa, what is this?
yeah, I'm saying you couldn't recognize it, right?
What is this? I've never felt this. Hold on. Yes, I have. But I wasn't alive. It was the same feeling that I had when I flatlined in the hospital. So I started checking myself. I'm like, hold
You
on.
thought you were
Am I
dead.
dead?
That's funny, interesting.
No, okay, I'm alive. What is this? And when and that was the only thing that could show up for me was that just kind of hint of a question, what is this? And from this place, Todd, that you keep reaching to, up came this answer, and it said, I'm you. And I went, oh. And in that moment, the picture that I drew for you was born. And that picture is a circle that contains the words I am. And the first word I had to put in there was love.
Oh, yeah.
That was the one I experienced before. I am. Awareness, consciousness, love, understanding, gratitude, humility, clarity, peace, energy, knowing, forgiveness, service.
Yeah.
Every one of these words that we have come to use in our vocabulary to describe beautiful experiences
Yeah.
are actually coming from within us. But our identity, this thing that lives up here, and that's what exists outside the circle.
Yeah.
And underneath of identity, I write the words, who I think I am. And then everything contained in that space falls under the definition of I am not. That's where fear, doubt,
Yeah.
anger, judgment, everything, really physical, pain, whatever. I am not that. What I am is not only this ageless inner child, but this thing called consciousness that is the energy source behind my existence. And when it leaves me, I'm no longer alive because this thing isn't working anymore.
I love the ageless. That really does kind of bring it.
It's
into,
ageless and timeless.
because it's separate from this physical
Yeah.
body. Like this is like a
it's
a container.
It's separate and not.
Yeah.
It's one with the physical body. And the beauty of it is, so in my little brief bio there, I say, I've had a couple of experiences that have given me the gift of recognizing and experiencing the difference between who I am and who I thought I was. And the beauty of knowing that is that once you experientially know it and know it for what it is, it doesn't leave. So then when you're going through life and these things that used to be triggers, that used to be upsetting to you, now in a moment, instead of going into your brain to try to deal with them, which is this thing is always sending us into fight or flight.
Yes.
It's reactive by nature because its design is to protect us.
Yes.
And now, in the world that we live in now, the thing that it's protecting us from is feeling bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to. Yeah, that's one thing I had to teach myself, that there's healthy anger, there's healthy fear. See, I thought that it was only negative because you're taught in life that all that's just negative.
Yeah.
You know, you shouldn't be angry. You shouldn't be. You know, but no, there's healthy anger, there's healthy fear, things that help propel you forward and push you. Or like, you know, if you know that there's a rattlesnake over there, that's a healthy fear. Don't go that way. Go this route.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Why risk? Take a risk and get yourself bit. You know.
And there are two different words that I use a lot. So there's panic
Yes.
and peace.
Yes.
And earlier when we were talking, I asked, what's the state you go into? You said calm, peace.
Yeah.
And so there is not one decision we ever make in life that is more effective coming from panic than if that same decision were to be made from a state of peace.
Yeah.
Not one. Even the rattlesnake.
Yeah.
So we see the rattlesnake, and the first thing that our brains tells us to do is to be terrified and to panic. But when this understanding that lives within us does what you said earlier, say, it's okay.
Yeah.
It calms you down so that you then make a decision.
The right decision, yeah.
The right decision, the one that works the best for your
so
experience.
So you don't end up running out and jumping off, falling off a cliff and dying. It was like I had one of my youngest kid, my oldest kid, Spencer, the oldest boy. He at 1 year, 6 months old, was almost a SIDS baby, and because my parents had told me what happened to me, I was almost a SIDS baby and what to do. My ex-wife panicked. And she called 911, then hung up on 911, and I picked the baby up and remembered what my parents told me, and I stayed in a state of calm. I don't panic in panic situations. I stay calm. And I knew what to do. I picked him up. I started sucking the mucus out of his nose and mouth, spit it out. He started breathing again.
Yeah.
So if I would have panicked like she did, baby probably would have died.
Yeah.
But I didn't panic like that. So I knew that I had to, and that comes from the program that I had to learn. And I have to fight for that program at times.
And the program that you had to learn was one of the ways to live from the truth that I am not this.
Yes.
I am this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this thing knows.
This is broken. See, you had to learn this is broken, this is not broken.
Yeah.
That's what I had to learn.
And this is programmable. Like my head is spinning. I'm thinking about so many things right now because, you know, especially with like AI and artificial intelligence, it's interesting this segue of thinking about that this body, our brain, like we talk about how computers and even the AI is getting close to being as good as like a human brain. But I love this idea that you're saying is that actually it really is just the most advanced and
Human brain.
yeah, it is. But it is it's not a machine,
It's
really.
not a machine.
But it's
broken. A machine
but it
can
is
stay
a
true.
program. Like if you think about it in those terms, there is programming that is occurring from the minute we're born, and like it all kind of fits. And this idea that this I am, this part is in this being, but it is like a temporary artificial, like this. Yeah, it's a simulator essentially.
But it's always looking for the easy way out.
It is always looking for the way to get it feeling better fastest.
Yes.
Yeah, to feel,
because that's what it's driven to do.
Yeah.
All anyone ever wants, I don't care. They can tell you, they can give you a million different stories about what they want. Yeah. But the root of every one of those stories is they want to feel better.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly right.
It's all the same thing. And so then my invitation is, well, if there were a simple understanding available to you that would get you what you want, would you be interested in that? And every person I've ever asked that to has said, yes. Yeah. And what you want is to feel better. Okay, well, let me pose you a question. Are you open to the possibility that you are not your thinking? Are you open to the possibility that you are not your thinking? Now, I get it. This is a question now that is so out there that everyone has heard it, or some version of it. But the problem is they go into their intellect to try to make it work.
Yep.
So it becomes a manipulation of thinking rather than an understanding of thinking. And you can't intellectually undo your attachment to your identity. It is intellect. You can't intellectually let go of that. The only way you can let go of it is when it gets quiet enough that the experience you're having in that moment is coming from a place other than the intellect.
Yes.
And it's that place, Todd, that you keep going down here with your hands to identify. And when this, and let's call it awareness in the moment, or presence. Let's call it awareness or presence. When awareness looks up and observes identity, it sees identity for what it is. Not you, and for the most part, not true or accurate. And as soon as identity gets seen, you know, people are always saying, I want to feel seen, I want to feel understood. They don't know that they're walking around with the most powerful tool to be seen and understood that they could possibly ever come in contact with. So the way it starts for them is they meet with somebody who has an understanding of the difference between who they are and who they think they are. And when they're in conversation with that person, they do this a lot. Whoa, why do I feel so good? It must be you. You must be the reason I feel so good. And I'm always telling them, no. Here's the role that I play. I play the role of helping you have little, small realizations that this thing is not who you are. And in those gaps where it gets still, every time you go like this, that opens a gap in your thinking where this feeling rises up from within, and then you go, whoa, it's coming from you, not me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm helping you.
Yeah.
I'm helping you feel it, but the feeling itself is you.
Yeah, we have to always tell people that it's, in our program, it's surrendering. See, the problem with
surrendering, letting go.
Yes, when we can't surrender, it's like we think our mind can work our way out of it, and that's just not the case. You have to surrender to the fact that, okay, it's broken, and it's been broken. You were born that way. That's just how it is. It doesn't just happen by circumstance.
You were born with the tendencies, and they have been strengthened over time, depending on how powerful this instrument is.
That's right.
And one of the greatest gifts is a bad memory, because when you start to lose your memory, you start to lose your identity.
Yeah.
And you start to lose your ability to hold on to ideas of how things should be.
That's right, yeah.
And then your suffering starts to go down.
Yep.
Interesting, yeah.
And you get to be what's called present. Now, presence is misunderstood in Western culture because we are so attached to having something mean something in time that we think that presence means living in the moment. Well, sort of it does, because we're actually only ever living in the moment. It's not possible to ever live anywhere other than the moment. The only place you cannot be in the moment is in your brain. So you can go into your brain and remember the past, and you can go into your brain and think about the future, and this is where most people live all the time. And so it feels to them like when they're not thinking of the past or thinking of the future, that they are living in the moment. What they're actually doing is experiencing a moment of mental stillness, which connects them to this thing that has become known as presence, which is who we are. I am presence. It's the spiritual truth of who I am. I am that. when this is quiet, that's where my experience comes from. And then we go, I feel so present. Yeah, of course I do. And I look at that picture of the circle and go, I am, and then the word presence shows up. And I'm like, of course, that's what I am. And this thing is just a big experience that we get to at any moment have input from two sources. We can have input from our intellect, which tends to be reactive, judgmental, fearful, doubtful, angry, doesn't really have the best answers for too many things.
Yep.
And it tells us, you got to do this, you got to do that. So we're scrolling through Instagram every day, looking for someone else's wisdom on how to improve our lives. And then we go, oh, yeah, if I only I work out like this, I'll feel happy. No, not true.
No, yeah.
Not true.
See, I use Instagram as entertainment. Because that's all it really is to me. It's just entertainment.
That's
all
all
it is.
is.
I don't use it to change something or figure something out because I know that it's not going to happen that way.
And
I
it's-
have to be okay with it in myself.
Yeah, and it has to be limited too. I love all of this that you're explaining, Andrew. It's helping so much. And I have a question related to all this because I love what you're saying about the stillness epidemic. I think it's so true. And I'm thinking about it as a parent.
Yeah.
And we look at, there's a lot of articles that are out there about the struggles that this next generation is having with technology and things like that. And I think there's a root here that we're hitting upon is this lack of stillness. Like so much of childhood, it manifests for us like in the car, right? The kids wanting to, get on a hotspot or have something to be connected. Whereas what was
just
it
what we're
like when
trained
we
to
were in
be.
the car? We would just be staring out the window and just
Noticing.
there was
Yeah, we played. That's why we knew where we were going because you knew the streets, you knew where we were.
Yeah.
Because nowadays,
We didn't need
like,
GPS.
No. they're
well,
like,
and there
no.
was a lot of
Our
built
minds were on driving.
Yes.
Yeah.
there was a lot of built-in stillness
Yeah.
in childhood.
Yes.
And you're thinking of your childhood. Like, let's go
Yeah.
back in time.
In my childhood, I was born in the 60s.
You were born even earlier.
Yeah.
Let's go back even further in time.
Yeah.
Prior to the Industrial Revolution, the only thing people had to think about was survival.
That's right.
So they would play. Like, it's not a wonder that we would play from sunup to sundown in the summertime.
Yeah.
Because play was so much a part of the culture at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's input.
Yeah. So
Play has to come from outside.
yeah, I know that you have kids. So how have you been able to weave this into your parenting and teach them some of this?
So, yeah. So my kids,
Wait a minute. First of all, what ages are your kids?
okay, so I've got 30, 23, and 21.
Okay.
And this did get woven into the kids. And I'll tell you one of the stories that's, okay. So one of Carter's responsibilities, he's our youngest, and he was a little bit obstinate. He was the one least likely to probably do what we asked him to do. And our kids had chores. Just you had a lot of chores.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Done.
Our kids had chores, and they were pretty good about doing them. Carter, at times, really did not want to do his chores. So one day, Jill was kind of at the end of her rope with him, and she said, I cannot get him to do this. It's so easy. Why won't he do it? He just won't. It was like vacuuming the stairs. It's not a big deal. And she said, I need you to take over on this. So he came into my office, and from a moment of stillness, I had a little bit of insight in the moment, and this is what I said. I said, okay, Carter, today when you vacuum the stairs, I want you to try something. I want you to try it thinking about the action in two different ways. And then I want you to come back and report to me what the experience of it was like. And the first way I want you to do it is I want you to think about how much you hate it, how hard it is, how you wish you didn't have to do it. Come back and tell me what that's like. And then the next time I want you to think of, so we did that, and he came back and he's like, that was awful. And I said, okay, this time when you're doing it, I want you to think about how much of a difference you're making, how much you love to contribute, how happy this is making for mom, how good you are at this. Now go try that. And he just right out of my office, got the vacuum, vacuumed the stairs. And meanwhile, Jill's hearing him vacuum the stairs, but she didn't hear any fighting. And so she's like, how on earth did he get him to do his chores without making him do his chores? And why is Carter not fighting with him after I've been fighting with him for, however
Days
long?
or hours or whatever.
And it was because that his relationship to the chore changed. It was no longer something he had to do. So as soon as he dropped the feeling of having to do it, he dropped the need to judge himself by his action, because we're constantly in the mode of judging. Am I good enough? Am I doing? So he lost that, and his mind was still enough to focus outwards instead of inwards. So when our focus goes outwards, everything's easier. When it gets focused on creation of something outside ourselves, it's easier. When it gets turned back and we're looking at ourselves, trying to judge how good we are, whatever we're doing is going to come with a heaviness that will stop us, in most cases, from doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's one way, and that's just one little example of what's available from insight, which is another word, again, for just who we are. We are insight. And insight has really good ideas. Way better ideas than anger, reaction, fear, doubt. Because if I had approached that as, I'm only a good parent if my child does what I tell him to do. Well, that's not true. Because in the history of the world, no parent has ever had their children do everything they want them to do.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's no evidence to support that being a good parent requires my children doing everything I want them to do. But we think there is because of the image we built up of what a parent is supposed to be. And earlier you used the sentence, I should be doing this. Well, why? Why should I be doing this? And as soon as you ask why from a place of stillness, then from inside comes understanding that touches the question why and understands it. Oh, I think I should be doing this because I've been told that in order to be a good person, this is one of the things I must do.
That's interesting. Yeah, I also learned to set realistic goals for myself. So I don't shortchange myself. Like, if I have stuff to do, I go, okay, I'm going to do this and this. And I set, and this is what I want to accomplish during the day. So when that's done, I feel great about myself.
Yeah.
It's when we set those unrealistic goals.
Yes.
That I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this, that. Then when you don't accomplish it, then you're like, oh my God, my world's falling apart. That doesn't help us at all.
It absolutely does not. And if you have goals, keep them limited.
Yep.
Because, yes, this identity, it does appreciate some things. It appreciates accomplishment.
Yes.
It feels better about itself when it accomplishes something.
Yep.
But if you set a goal, like, okay, so my son Carter this weekend is running a half marathon. And so on the way over here, I was talking to someone about his half marathon. It was my sister. I'm talking to my sister in Canada about him running the half marathon. And the question came to me, could I run a half marathon? And I'm like, well, not today. Not today. She said I couldn't even run to the end of my street. And I'm like, well, yeah, but if we trained for it and set little goals, and those goals were based in observation rather than judgment, like, can I do it? I don't know. Let's see. So the question, let's see, is energizing. And the question I have to, or the statement I have to, is energy draining.
Yes.
Like as soon as you have to do something,
Right.
this outer child, the child that we grew up with that hated being told what to do, shows up and gets rebellious, doesn't want to do it, but then gets into conflict about doing it and is like, well, I have to.
That's what, I find that with sometimes when I was playing with Ryan and Rocky and him, we were hitting the paddle ball, I guess. What's that game they play?
Pickleball.
Pickleball. We're hitting
The huge
just
one now.
in the air to each other. And Rocky goes, I bet you can't do that. I said, I bet you I can't either no more. And I started laughing. He goes, what do I go, Rocky? I don't have to prove anything to anyone but myself.
No.
I go, I used to be able to do that. Yeah, I said, but now I got bad knees. I'm being honest with myself.
Yeah.
I got bad knees, bad shoulders. I got shoulder blades, and I had all the stuff done to my body that it's not the same anymore. I could probably do it if, like you said, if I trained and got back into it. But the problem's going to be you have to, when you get my age, you got to do it every day. You take off, it's done.
Yeah. And if every day you can find, well, let's see.
Yeah, exactly.
If you can find that, let's see.
Yep.
Like, that's fun. So another one of the things that I use, and this came to me with a client one time who had an idea about how long something was going to take. And I grew up in this world of just overwhelm, massive overwhelm, because my brain was judging how good I was all the time, and I wasn't that good, and I wanted to maintain an image of being good. So the best way for me to maintain that image was to never shatter it.
Gotcha.
And so if I didn't do anything, I couldn't shatter the image. Oh, I could have got 100 on that test. I didn't study. I don't want to shatter the image. So this client was like, I got to do this thing, and I said, well, how long is it going to take? And he said, I bet it would take like 4-5 hours. I said, okay, why don't you just give a little test to yourself and see? I said, I want you to block out 4 hours of time where there's not going to be one other distraction for you. And then I want you to set a stopwatch, not a timer, or not a
Like an alarm or whatever.
not a I'm going to do this for 4 hours, but rather block out that amount of time and then start your stopwatch and see how long it takes. And it took him like an hour and a half, something like that. But just that little action changed his relationship to it from one of, this is going to take too long, I have no time, I can't get it done, to, okay, now it's an experiment.
How long is it going to take?
Now it's a game.
Yeah.
Now it's a game. How long is this actually going to take? And as soon as you do that, this gets quiet, the judgment stops, you start doing it. So I want to say it was like a year after that, and I'd been using this technique with some of my clients after that. A year later, I had something go wrong on my computer that I couldn't solve. And it was driving me insane. And it was that my computer wasn't my programs weren't synced, so that I couldn't book people for Zoom calls through my email client. I had to go and actually manually do it on the website every single time for it to work. And it made it so I had this underlying feeling of apprehension every time I had to book a call, because I knew I had to book it in 3-4 places, and the possibility was that I would get it wrong, and it'd be time, whatever.
Yeah.
And I thought, and in that moment of clarity, my mind went, could a reasonable person figure this out? And I went, yeah. So this is this thing down here saying to me, could a reasonable person figure this out? Yes. Are you a reasonable person up here? Yeah. Okay. How long is it going to take? I figured it was going to take me, I think, 4 or 5 hours. Because it was complex and I'm not really gifted in the world of technology. Or so it's one of the beliefs my identity has about myself. So I said, okay, I'm going to figure it out. I got nothing on the calendar right here. Let's just see how long this takes. And I set the thing, it started going. I ran into my first problem a couple of minutes in, and my first reaction, my tendency was to quit. Because there's the bad feeling, right?
Yeah.
I'm stupid. I can't figure this out. They couldn't do it, neither can I. And I'm like, no. I looked at the stopwatch. It was running. I'm like, no. I committed to this. Let's see. And with calmness, I went through all the troubleshooting. I found the source of the problem. And how long do you figure it took me to solve this?
35 minutes.
You are the closest anyone's ever been. It was 29 minutes and 25 seconds.
Wow.
See, the reason why I understand that, I do computer stuff. I've been doing computer stuff all my life, since I was little.
Yeah.
So, like when I was fixing my computer, for me, I know when something doesn't work, you have to wait, and you have to re-look at it and go, and then try all the known methods, and then when that doesn't work, you can get advice too. You can go on YouTube and go, okay.
Yeah, you were probably searching and
see,
searching.
listen.
So see, that's what I've learned to do.
Listen how functional you are.
Yeah, I've learned to
listen
do that.
to this.
Yeah. Like I fixed our water softener was broken, and I fixed that. And it was like, I had to look at it, and then the first day, the parts weren't right. I was like, that's weird. And I was like, okay. So I said, oh yeah, if I slice this together, and I went, got it, and I got it working.
But how good did you feel when you fixed it?
It's the best feeling in the world. But I still go and look at it and make sure everything's running properly, because now it makes me a part of my identity, because now it's like, okay, it's working.
Yes.
So let's make sure it keeps working.
So
I'm looking at it.
So
I see
you've
what I need.
recreated your identity.
Yes.
You've taken it out of I'm a person who can't do this, and you've now reshaped it to I'm a person who can do this.
Yes. And I take the time to do it, and I don't let myself be rushed by it anymore.
And that thing there, like I try to get people to understand and draw attention to the good moments in their lives so they can recognize that that moment can become representative of all other moments.
Yes. Yeah.
But here's the challenge with it. The challenge is that it never occurs to our brain to go down and look at good moments and say, this is what life is like. Because we don't have a desire to change good moments.
So
The moments we want to change are the ones we don't like. And so those are the ones that get all of our mental attention. And we drop into mental attention, and here is the tendency of our brain is to look at a negative moment and then go into the past and find every piece of evidence to show that it's always been like this.
Yeah.
And then go into the future and project that it's always going to be like this and say, what's the point?
Oh, yeah. That's what, see, one of the things that I had to learn with myself was trying to figure out, like, I look at my past and goes, oh, if I hadn't made those mistakes, I would, but then this is how I look at it now. I go, but I wouldn't be who I am today.
You wouldn't be.
And
you
that's
wouldn't be
what
where you are.
I would not be where I'm at, would not be who I am. I'd say I'd be some guy, some person sitting on top of over here, don't care about anybody, don't want to help anybody,
Right.
only helping myself and my family, and that's it. And you can't live your life like that.
And what's your driving reasoning behind the podcast?
The podcast is to get people out to understand about addiction, to understand about helping themselves emotionally, mentally, those kind of things.
You want to help people have a better experience of life.
Yep. Yeah.
And
so does
guess
she,
what you couldn't do if you didn't have the understanding of how to change from one experience of life you didn't like into one you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need the contrast.
Need all of it. Oh yeah.
So you and I, all of us, have the same kind of experiences as I've got written up in the bio, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I have it narrowed down to a couple of really powerful experiences that had me go, oh, geez, I had no idea I wasn't this. Most people, it takes multiple experiences, but it's the same result.
Yeah.
It's the same result. And that is that your experience of life goes from one that you don't like into being more consistently one that you do like, one that's fun. Like if life were a vacation,
Right.
well, what would we do to plan it out? And if things went wrong on it, would we leave the vacation?
That's exactly, yeah, you're right.
No.
Yeah.
No, we would go, oh, that sucked. Well, I've got 4 days left.
Yeah.
Let's have some fun in the last 4 days.
Right. Yeah.
Well, life is like that.
You have to be adaptive. If you're not adaptive, you're gonna. I always tell people it's like in our program we also teach each other is like doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. If you stabbed yourself over and over again, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
It's gonna hurt every time you do it. It's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
So how do you not do that? Don't stab yourself. Move to the side. Do something a little different. And believe me, the result will be different. But if you do the same thing over and over again, you're expecting different results, it's not going to happen.
But this is the other thing that is difficult to help people to recognize because we don't remember in the moment what makes the difference.
Yes, that's
so
true.
there are two things that just brought to mind. So we had on our fridge when I was a kid growing up a quote that says, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting just different results is the definition of insanity.
Yes.
Okay. I never got it. Yeah, it was there. I read it. It was content. Content isn't transformative. Conversation and experience is transformative. You can consume all the content you want, but until it drops, it drops.
Yep.
And the problem is we don't stay with content long enough for it to drop.
Yeah.
So instead of scrolling for 3 hours, we should look at the same post for 3 hours. The one that has us go, don't scroll past it.
Yeah.
Stay with it. So, but the other thing that the fridge brought up in my mind is is an example of the simplicity of changing the way things happen for us. So my mom, who calls me for coaching all the time now, which is the funniest thing, my parents calling me for coaching, like it's crazy, because they would never ask me for advice until I knew the difference between who I am and who I thought I was.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I was coming up with these things that were making a big difference in their lives. So my mom, when I was home visiting a few years ago, she opened the freezer. What she was looking for wasn't in there. She opened the fridge. It wasn't in there. She closed the fridge, and she stood up and whacked her head on the freezer door that was still open, the corner of the freezer door, and oh my gosh. And the first thing that her brain did was start to judge herself. Why are you so stupid? You do this all the time. You always, and so in that moment, her mind said, you've always done this, you will always do this. And I happened to walk into the room right after it happened. And I'm like, Mom, I know it hurts, but it sounds to me like most of your suffering is coming from your judgment.
Yes.
Your self-judgment.
Oh, yeah.
She said, yes, because I'll never stop doing this. I said, can I give you an idea? It's so simple that you might think it's stupid. But what if you, on that little whiteboard you have, just write, watch your head. So that it's the last thing you think about every time you go to the fridge. You'll see that first, and there you go.
Yep.
So this was years ago. How many times do you think she's hit her head on the freezer door since the sign went up, watch your head?
None.
0.
Yeah.
So how many times has she found herself in that horrible spiraling judgment, I'm so stupid, how do I keep doing this, relative to that thing?
Oh, yeah. We're
0.
harder on ourselves than anyone is. And I had to also learn that when I used to walk into a room, I used to think that everyone's looking at me and talk about me. That's what I used to think. Then I had to tell myself, you're not that important.
Yeah.
I had to come to the realization that they don't care. They got their own lives in their head.
It's so true.
They don't care about you, Todd. So then I was like, oh, dang. Okay, yeah. So then I realized, wait a minute. It's because you don't feel good about yourself when you're walking in there. So now you think they're all talking about you. And that came back to me.
Yes, and along with that is you thinking about yourself all day, every day.
That's right.
And so you are going to think that other people are thinking about
That's
you.
right.
You're not going to think they're thinking about themselves.
That's
You're going to think
right.
they're thinking about you.
Yeah.
So when you change and you go from that inward looking to outward looking, the beauty of this thing called consciousness, called presence, called understanding, is that it doesn't experience need.
That's right.
It doesn't need anything. It doesn't need validation.
That's right.
It doesn't need love. Why would it need love? It is love.
Yeah.
It doesn't need it. This thing needs it. And when we drop out of this thing so that more of our experience is coming from within, which is the only place this thing can look is outward, it never looks in at itself, then we have this experience of freedom and ease in social settings. We're no longer filled with anxiety or exhausted, or we're no longer fighting with our spouses or our kids because we don't feel the need for anything. Don't need them to love us, don't need ourselves to be right, we've lost the very thing that is at the root of all suffering, which is thinking things should be a certain way.
Yeah, I have learned, that's what I have learned, that I don't care whether I'm right or not anymore. I have in my head, if I'm right, I'm fine with that. And you can tell me you're not right, and I'll be like, okay, whatever you say, because you know something? I know it's about. See, what our program teaches us, it's about without me, I'm nobody. Yeah. And there you are. Without me, I'm nobody.
Yeah.
Which means that if I don't keep myself together, no one else has anything. So I have to be good with me and be okay with me, whatever place I'm in, whatever situation I am in. Don't judge myself so harshly. Don't chop myself down. Yeah. When I've learned to do that, my life for me is better. Yeah. And we call it a selfish program. This program is about me.
Put your mask on first.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Put your mask on first before you help somebody else. That's exactly right.
Well, this has been so eye-opening.
Oh my gosh, are we done already?
We need to be, but
how long have we been
like
doing this?
I feel like we've been over an hour.
Oh my gosh!
But I feel like we could just keep on going. I would love to have any last little bits of advice that you have for listeners. Something they could do today.
Okay, so today, my gosh, today, well, as I've made available for this, I'm going to give you the image.
That graphic, yeah,
The
with
image.
the circle.
And if you look at that graphic the entire time you listen to this podcast, which we're at the end of the podcast now, so you'll have to re-listen to it, you will see that image so differently than you saw it the first time you looked at it.
So you're saying almost even sit with it in stillness, like you're saying.
In stillness, sit with it in stillness. It will resonate with you. And why will it resonate? Because of the truth contained in it.
It's almost like you can learn it for yourself. You need to take
you can learn it, which tends to take us up into the intellect, but it's really an experience. It's really an experience. It is that thing that has you go, huh? When you consider something you've not considered before. And I can't tell you how many of my clients, and that's only because I don't have a number of how many clients I've had, because every one of them has said the same thing at some point. I have never thought of it like that before. And in that moment, I direct them to the feeling that they're having.
Yeah.
How do you feel? I feel really good. I want you to notice that feeling is not coming from outside you, it's coming from inside you.
I love that. Yeah.
And as soon as they do that, then this little thing up here makes a connection between the feeling and the knowing that we put into words of the difference between who I am and who I thought I was. And as soon as it does that, it kind of sticks a little bit and goes, huh. And the first thing they'll start doing is, maybe there's something to this.
Yeah.
And as it goes on, it becomes more of, oh. And then it gets to where Todd was just talking about, which is, I just know. And it's not a rebellious sort of, I know. It's a calm, peaceful knowing, which is very different than the resistant, I know, I know, I know. Like when you're talking to someone and they say, I know, I know, I know. As soon as they say that, they're shutting down listening to what you're saying.
Right.
Because their brain doesn't want to feel stupid. It's the number one thing it protects itself from. So it does that and says, I know, I know, I know. So don't do that. So stay in stillness. Now, as one other thing, I think when this podcast comes out, I'm writing a book right now.
Okay.
It's not finished. I've written another book. It's on golf and life. That one got released a few years ago. It's pretty cool, called Change Your Game, Change Your Life. The one I'm working on now is much more powerful and direct in the helping of people to feel better.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And by the
look
time
forward to
this
that.
podcast is released, which I think is going to be end of
summer.
June,
Yeah.
summer,
Do you have a
June,
name? Do you have
July.
a name on it?
Yeah, the book is called Of Course.
Of course.
course.
Oh, wow, that's a good name.
Of course.
Very good title.
It is the language that understanding speaks.
Gotcha.
Understanding. So remember at the beginning of our conversation today, I told you that I lived in the exhausting question, why? Why? Understanding doesn't have that question.
Oh, yeah. Because you don't need to know why when you understand.
Understanding has one job. It understands. I am that. Think of understanding not as an action, but as a noun. Understanding is a noun. I am understanding. And when something comes in contact with understanding, it becomes understood, including this thing up in our head that creates all of our suffering. So for people who suffer, I don't want us to stop suffering. That would ruin our experience of life.
Yeah.
We have to.
Yeah.
You've got to have contrast.
It's a part of us.
You just don't want to live in fear of the experience of life.
Yeah.
So I guess those are the two things I would recommend. And it seems a little self-focused to do that. There are other things that I would recommend too, because there are so many resources out there. Alan Watts is a great resource. Go listen to Alan Watts talk about how things are. Anyway.
No, this is great,
go
Andrew.
to my website. Look at the image.
I
Look
think
at
people
the
need
book.
to check out your podcast
Yes,
too.
yeah. Sure.
You have been such a great guest. We've loved hearing from you. And Todd, it's your ToddFlix time.
Oh, my topics time. Today? No, I'm just kidding. I want to talk about today is I've watched Mufasa. and it's the Lion King remake, so it's more about Mufasa, this original story this time.
I actually feel like it's a perfect one for today too. It fits so well with what we've been talking about. Well, if you watch
the show, yes. What it's basically about is this young lion who's learning how to be, strong, and he takes his family that he's living with, because the parents are getting attacked by these ghost lions, supposedly. But what it's really, to me, what I got out of it was he's teaching himself how to be stronger. He's taking his journey, this path, and he's going to start his own pride. And I think that has a lot to do with growing up. When you grow up in such a craziness as we all did, you get your family, you're taking your pride, you're teaching your family how to live and, get through life easier. I did miss James Earl Jones's voice, but in the beginning of it, they gave him a great homage, which was great. They said, this is by James Earl Jones. And you can go ahead and try to do his voice. Do his voice, let me see.
The great kings are hidden in the stars.
I know.
Yes,
Andrew's good with the voices.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been talking for a long time, so it's not the best right now.
See, I used actually, when I was imprisoned, I used voices to get me through.
Really?
Oh, yeah. That's where I created all my voices. And all my characters came from being by myself.
Yeah.
Sitting by myself. Because, when you got
nothing but time.
That's where God had to put me to find myself.
It's all about stillness there.
Yes.
It's all about stillness. Yeah.
When you're by yourself, it's either you're going to go crazy or you're going to go nuts or you're going to.
And that was the option, right?
Yeah,
that was the option. And
yes.
you had enough input from inside you to say, listen.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go this way.
Yep. And I started doing voices and I was like, yeah, and it's great.
So in this remake, it's Aaron Pierre who voices the rising version of Mufasa. And this is like Disney's been on kind of like their live action kick, but this is obviously not really live action.
CGI, yeah.
But the CGI, the photorealistic animation is incredible.
Well, it looks incredible. It does look very real. Seth Rogen's voice is in it. He plays the same he plays the what do you call that thing? The
lemur?
No, not the lemur. He plays the pig thing. The
boar?
The boar.
Yeah.
The boar, yeah. He plays that, and then they have some of the same voices actually in it, and then
from the original Lion King?
Because they're the ones that he runs to originally. So that's how it all gets started. Awesome. So this is actually about Mufasa, which I think is James Earl Jones's character. I believe this is all about. So
the dad in the original,
and how he got away and started his
and
own
his
pride.
kind of backstory.
Yes, yeah.
So this is a good one. This
very
is really
good.
worth
Kids
watching.
will love it.
Right.
You'll love watching it. You'll enjoy it.
And
very
it's
good.
beautiful.
And you should watch it with your family. If you got young kids, watch it with your kids. You have older kids, watch it with them too. Watch it with your family. It's a good family movie. It really
awesome.
is. And the music in it is great. Singing, a lot of singing too.
I love music.
Yeah. You don't hear that I want to be king. You don't hear that one, but you hear other songs.
That's another thing. Oh, sorry. That was the end, right?
That was supposed to be.
That's the other thing. One of the greatest things to help get you into stillness of mind is beautiful music.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I love that you brought attention to the music in it. Is beautiful.
Yeah.
So we talked about nature shows, beautiful music, or prison.
Yeah.
I mean,
or prison.
But you want to avoid avoid the prison. Trust me when I tell you that. Not everyone can be next to Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, and get through their lives.
We did do a whole episode on what life was like in prison.
And Eric and Lon Menendez, those two guys too.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
In season 1, check out his prison. It's called Dang Prison.
Yeah.
Like if you
Dang
look at
Prison. I got to go back and listen to that.
It's a good one.
You learn that you ain't like those people.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm the only one getting out of there. Like, no, you're not. I'm like, ah.
Yeah.
And then I came back a month later, and then finally I was done with it.
And at the same time, when you get into people's identities, you can understand why their identity told them they had to do what they did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't occur to them to do anything else.
Yeah.
So,
I've definitely learned that. It's you got to use your who you are and who you represent and who you become. For me, has been everything about me, and I've learned a lot. And I'm trying to teach my new family about respect, disrespect. Trying to to move.
You're trying
forward.
to teach us.
Well, I'm trying to show you
to learn
from
from
my
you.
example. That's what I'm trying to show you. You've taught me a lot. You've taught me how to really love. So that's something that how to love without having what do you call that? How to love without having
conditions.
Conditions, yes.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned from you. A lot of that from you, because that's I didn't know because I never really learned that. So I had to learn that from you. So
and if I can leave one more thing about that, like love that is conditional isn't love.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Love is unconditional. It just is.
Yep.
It's who we are. It loves.
Yep.
It has one job. It loves.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Well, dang.
Dang.
I'm Todd Bridges.
See you guys next week.
You're supposed to say goodbye.
I was saying.
No.
Okay, well, you do it. Show me how it's done, honey.
Okay, say dang again.
Well, dang.
Dang. I'm Todd Bridges.
He's supposed to say dang, too.
Okay, but you can say it.
Should we try it one more time?
Yes.
Well, dang.
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 And I'm Todd Bridges.
I'm Bettijo.
And I am Andrew McKee.
We'll see you next time. Like and subscribe. Dang is produced by my wife, Bettijo Bridges, in collaboration with Star Worldwide Network Studios, and edited by our daughter, Adelie Ann.
She's also the musician responsible for our theme music, so go check out Adelie Ann wherever you stream your music. Have a question or topic you want us to cover? Send us your suggestions at dangpodcast.com.
Do me a favor. Please subscribe and rate our podcast to make it easier for others to find. Have a great week.
Yeah,